Wild CryptoZoo scandal, huge tech companies firing tens of thousands of employees, China GDP and population number, and Saudi oil threatening the US dollar, all coming up on this week's Weekend Windup. As always, if you enjoyed this segment, smash that like button, subscribe, click the notification bell, and leave a comment if one of these stories interests you. Let's get into it. Is Saudi Arabia ending the petrodollar system? Saudi Arabia's finance minister Mohammed al-Jadaan announced at the World Economic Forum that they are willing to discuss trade agreements in currencies other than the dollar. The implication can upset the US dollar status as the world reserve currency. For context, this is contrary to the US-Saudi Arabian Joint Commission on Economic Cooperation in 1979 that helped the dollar establish its status as the world's reserve currency after persistent stagflation during the 1970s. Since then, oil exporting countries have traded using dollars. This is important for the United States as they are able to enjoy the benefits of the world reserve status by having consistent trade deficits, greater inflow capital, and the ability to finance deficits with low interest rate assets. Due to Saudi Arabia's de facto leadership of OPEC, it is highly likely that should Saudi Arabia sell oil in currencies other than the dollar, other oil exporting countries would follow. While viewing the bigger political picture, this can be seen as a blow to the West, led by the US, bringing us closer to the New World Order, led by China. Microsoft announced on Wednesday that it will be laying off 4.5% of its workers as part of an effort to cut costs amid changes in consumer behavior. The layoffs will impact roughly 10,000 of their 221,000 employees. The cuts are expected to be completed by the end of Q3 on March 31st, 2023. This is expected to result in costs upwards of $1.2 billion for the company, translating into a loss of 12 cents per share. Last year, the company began cutting jobs and laid off 1% of its workforce, roughly 1,000 jobs. As quoted by the CEO, "As we saw customers accelerate their digital spend during the pandemic, we're now seeing them optimize their digital spend to do more with less. This comes as the pandemic fueled a surge in online services and the expansion of cloud computing, which has taken a sharp decline because of high interest rates and resulting cash crunches." This is taking place conveniently after the fact that Microsoft is investing billions in AI. As discussed in last week's episode, Microsoft is making sure that it is a key player in the next wave of advanced computing. As such, they do not plan to freeze hiring like many tech companies. Instead, they are focusing their efforts on hiring more strategic roles. Google announced Friday that it would be laying off 12,000 of its employees. In an email to its employees, Sundar said, "Over the past 2 years, we've seen periods of dramatic growth. To match and fuel that growth, we hired for a different economic reality than the one we face today. Personally, while I do see a few recent hires being let go, I am noticing a lot of veterans, the 10 to 20 year range, at all of these tech companies being let go, which is quite alarming. While the severance packages laid out in the email do look quite generous, this is awful news for those being let go, as there is now a huge surplus of tech employees looking for a job, and most firms are no longer hiring." China GDP growth came in at 3% for 2022, higher than the 2.8% forecasted and much lower than the target of 5.5% set by Chinese officials in March of 2022. Kang Yi, China's Director of National Bureau and Statistics, did acknowledge that the growth figure was relatively fast, but also stated that the global trade situation was not optimistic and that the world economy may see stagflation. The Statistics Bureau also stated in a release that the foundation of Chinese economic recovery was not solid, as there are geopolitical instabilities to account for, as well as a triple pressure of demand contraction, supply shock, and weakening expectations. Some of China's major growth drivers also tapered off, as real estate saw a slump despite the easing of financing restrictions, and exports began to fall in October for the first time since May 2020. Separately, the Chinese population fell for the first time in 2022 since the 1960s. Population growth has been tapering off for many years, but this is the first year of negative growth. India, on the other hand, has been growing at an alarming rate and has, according to many analysts, overtaken China by population for the first time in history. Influencer Jake Paul and CoffeeZilla's CryptoZoo saga finally comes to a close. This is not our typical news story, but I do find it fascinating, so I'm going to report on it. Once again, an influencer uses influence to convince many people to make a poor investment. Jake Paul leveraged his following of tens of millions to pump up CryptoZoo, a game, as he called it, where investors could purchase zoo coins and buy and breed animals, earning rare eggs and hatching them. Well, it turns out the lead developer Jake hired was a criminal, the lead project manager Jake hired was a criminal, and Jake never paid either of them a red cent. The program collapsed and the internet investigator CryptoZoo swooped in and took all of this information public. In an outrage, Jake posted a response video to CryptoZoo's facts, calling him a fake investigator and overall just trying to smear his credibility while not denying any of his claims. He then threatened repeatedly to sue CryptoZoo for defamation. It turns out this wasn't the best move. The entire YouTube was quick to point out that the suit would not hold up in court, and in fact Jake was liable for a lot more. And the suit would honestly harm him more than do him good. He soon after posted a retraction, apologized to CryptoZoo, and also promised to return a little over $1 million to CryptoZoo investors. Now a lot more, many millions were invested, so it's a little help, but not great. If you want to hear more about this, I strongly suggest you check out CryptoZoo's channel. He's a lot of fun to watch. And that's it for this week's Weekend Windup. If any of the stories interest you or you want to learn more, leave a comment down below. I read them all and I will respond to all of them. Hit the like button, subscribe, click the notification bell, and I'll see you next week.